UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Welcome, boys and ghouls, to Franchise Fatigue, the little podcast on the United Federation of Podcast Network, where we cover movies, remakes, and sequels. And joining me is the ever-changing Zach Moore. This time you kind of look like a weird animation style.
Yeah, I'm basically a skeleton in a hoodie, I think.
Okay, yeah, that looks about right. So,
hello!
Excellent. I don't know about you, but I'm super hungry. Did you, you want a hot dog?
No, I will not be eating hot dogs anytime soon.
No?
After watching this movie, no.
Well, I wonder if our guest might like some hot dogs here. Marcelo J. Pico from the Talk Film Society joining us to wrap up this amazing trilogy of movies.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, in quotes, for having me. And no, I'm not going to have this hot dog. I'm going to give it to this homeless person instead.
A very altruistic thing to do, Marcelo.
Absolutely. Yes. No other reason why.
Just make sure you drop it on the ground first.
Yes.
Well, in case you haven't figured out what we're talking about, because chances are you probably haven't seen this movie that we're talking about.
Don't do it!
No,
please don't do it!
No.
I think that there's, 6 people on the planet who've seen it.
And half of them are right here.
So, Creepshow 3, made for HBO. Not quite as good as Game of Thrones, but we will discuss it nonetheless. Zach, have you got some trivia for us?
I do, Brandon.
Really?
I do have some trivia about Creepshow 3. So let's get into it. Creepshow 3, unlike Creepshow 2, have no involvement from Stephen King or George A. Romero, the creators of the Creepshow series, the movie series.
I would never have been able to figure that
out. Creepshow 3 also does not take its stories from the fictional Creepshow comic like we've seen in the previous 2 films. So there's a lot of a lot of disconnects between this and the first 2. Also, unlike the Stephen King, George A. Romero Creepshows, Creepshow 3 has CGI animation in place of traditional animation. So in those awkward kind of negative color transitions we see between stories, things that you see throughout the film. That's what they're talking about there. And in the first segment, Alice, and actually this is something that I thought was interesting because I thought it was a problem, but apparently it wasn't. When Alice uses what looks to be a rotary phone, but you hear beeping like she's dialing a number, it's not a mistake. In actuality, there are phones designed to look like rotary phones, but they actually have push buttons. So,
you know what? When we're recording this, I actually just saw a post going around on Facebook or whatever where some guy created a cell phone that works like a rotary phone. But
I saw that too.
Yeah, I actually just saw this the other day. I thought it was kind of funny.
I would love to have one of those, the kind of retro technology. It's like if you need a smartphone, but you don't want all the distractions. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah. So, that doesn't surprise me, because this movie has an incredible attention to detail and production value. So, people think that's a mistake, but they're not giving the movie enough credit. So, something like that would not slip through these guys' fingers, that's for sure.
No.
Slip by unnoticed. Now, according to the wedding invitation of the professor, the neighborhood in which all these stories take place is called Creepyville. So, very, very on-the-nose title for the town it takes place in. Also, one of the props in the radio, which is the second segment, is a bottle of Arrogant Bastard Ale at Andy's Kitchen. The slogan on the beer case reads, "You're not worthy," and this is an actual beer that is bottled in California. So,
I've had that beer. It's actually all right.
So you were worthy, Marcelo.
I was worthy. Yes.
And in the segment Haunted Dog, basically the last segment, the homeless person who is haunting the doctor He keeps saying, "Thanks for the dog, man," and it's very similar to Creepshow 2. And the hitchhiker, where the hitchhiker who's killed, he says, "Thanks for the ride, lady." So there are some parallels between those two stories as well.
Creepshow 2 did it better.
Yes, infinitesimally better. Yes, and Tales from the Dark Side, the movie from 1990, is often considered to be the true Creepshow 3 because George A. Romero and Stephen King contributed to that film. And it had nothing to do with this one. So a lot of people in their head canon, that's the real Creepshow 3.
For me, yes, that is.
Well, does that mean we need to watch it for this podcast, Zach?
No, it's fine.
I would recommend it. I'm pretty sure I looked it up just now. Yeah, the Cat from Hell is there. The segment that was supposed to be in Creepshow 2, but it's in Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, and it's actually pretty good.
Well, Tales from the Dark Side is its own series, right? And there's a series of movies?
which that show is also a spin-off of Creepshow. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of the same creative team behind Creepshow. They're like, oh, let's just do Creepshow the TV show and just call it Tales from the Dark Side. And I believe Creepshow 2's director also did work on that too. So yes, Tales from the Dark Side has a much bigger connection to Creepshow than this movie, in quotes, Creepshow 3. So yes, I can make that case that Tales from the Dark Side is the true follow-up to the first two Creepshows.
Well, this isn't the only Creepshow 3. Alex Wesley, a director, he shot a Creepshow 3 in 2001 on his VHS camera just for fun, as a tribute to his two favorite films, Creepshow 1 and Creepshow 2. Due to the name of the film, temp music was taken from other films, and it was a very rough video quality, and it can never be released. But he's fine with that, Alex Wesley, because he's kind of embarrassed by his early effort when he made it with the teenagers and his friends. Wesley is a writer-director known for Freak in the Basement, Demon Mind, and Zombie Infection. I have never heard of any of those.
Me neither. So if that version is better than this.
So
is this a remake then? We got to seek that one out and see if this guy will let us watch it?
We can track down his VHS copy. Yeah, if we're talking about extra movies to watch, that would be one of the extra movies to watch. That's really all the trivia that I had. But just for the listeners who probably won't see this film, I'll let you guys know there are basically 6 stories. There's a wraparound story, if you want to consider it that, like a prologue and an epilogue. The prologue is animated, the epilogue's not, but they're kind of connected, I guess, because of the replacement creep. Raoul the Ghoul is now a hot dog vendor. So he's in those two. But in between,
you can't just go around creeping people all the time. You got to make some money, right?
That's true.
That's his day job.
In between those, there is Alice, the radio, Call Girl, the Professor's Wife, and Haunted Dog. And those are your segments in Creepshow 3.
Excellent. Well, let's jump into the discussion of this film. I was amazed that you were able to find that much trivia on it, Zach. This movie is terrible. And I guess we'll just do what we did last time and just go at them one at a time. So let's start with the first one, Alice here. So I was very confused by this short. I don't understand why her moving back and forth through these dimensions was causing these weird tumors or whatever on her body. Could you explain that to me?
But was she turning back into a rabbit? Or
was she
that it?
Used to be a rabbit? I don't know.
It seems that she used to be a rabbit that escaped and somehow turned into a girl.
What?
And her dad had a universal remote that changed her back and forth because it came from the crazy professor.
But then why did her family change into like Hispanic people and black people?
Because one button controls the color. So the
oh my goodness.
White family became black. One button controls the language. So the white family became Hispanic, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like the movie Click, Brandon. It's the remote control that can do anything.
Which one came first, this or Click? Did this movie, inspire Click?
Clearly, we need to watch Click now.
Yeah, it's part of the Creepshow 3 universe.
Multiverse.
No, it was extremely confusing. It was really gross. I hated all the characters in it, and I was glad when it was over.
So, are we talking about the segment or the whole movie?
Yeah, so we have this really rude girl who's like the stereotypical TV show
Oh my
bully.
god, I hate it here,
She's like throwing people's balls that are like accidentally bouncing on her and getting mad and talking to her friends, and she gets home and her family is weird and her brother is weird, and yeah, she deteriorates every time the dad's remote control so her dad bought this used remote control for some guy in the street and he can't figure it out, and all of a sudden, yes, the family start changing every time he pushes buttons. I just don't get how she ended up becoming the rabbit at the end. I just don't understand. So at the end, she was turned into a rabbit named Alice in Wonderland. I guess like
White Rabbit. Yeah, clearly that's the tie in there.
I'm guessing she turned into a rabbit because didn't the remote control come from that professor, that crazy professor?
Yeah. Let's zoom out a second. Let's zoom out a second. These are all interconnected stories,
right?
Somehow, and that's the only kind of interesting thing about this movie is that all these characters are in each other's stories, and on paper that's kind of interesting conceptually. Right. In an anthology series, and execution is done horribly. But trace it back. The guy who sells the radios sells all kinds of stuff. We see a remote control like that on his stack. We find out later
the radio actually takes place before.
Yeah, well, they're all it's all connected. Yeah, and we find out at the very end that the professor is the one giving this street vendor all this stuff. So, ergo, the remote control did indeed come from the professor.
So, yeah, basically this movie's like Pulp Fiction, but crap.
Yes, the Sin City Pulp Fiction style of it's all the characters. It can be done well. It's not done well here.
Right.
So, but does that answer your question? The remote control did indeed come from the professor.
Yeah, and even like the dad said in the first segment, "Oh, look at this control. Doesn't it remind you of like the professor's gadgets or something like that?" Like a truly among the awful lines of the movie, a truly awful exposition line. Like, "Hey, this is all connected, right?"
Yeah. So, okay, let's, before we go on to any more sections here, let's just pause for a second because...
and stop this podcast.
Let's just stop, okay? So, I want to know, like, I've got a lot of problems with this movie because this movie, the people who have made this have no comprehension of what made Creepshow and Creepshow 2 great movies. Yeah. Like, in this movie... Like, I would classify that they are trying to make a horror comedy, and there is nothing about Creepshow and Creepshow 2 that I would put under the category of horror comedy. There are maybe some comedic elements here and there, and you might be laughing at the silliness of the style of the filmmaking, right? And not because it's bad filmmaking, but it's the style that they're going for, like the over-the-top horror. Right? Like the way that like it you have these flashes of color like a comic book. It's a style of filmmaking, and I was laughing at that because it's like, oh, I know what they're doing here and this is fun. But in this, they're actively trying to do humor. And that's not what Creepshow is about at all.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. Well, I agree with you that I mean, why does this even exist with these people behind, the creative wheel? We had a quick conversation, Brandon and I, before recording. I'm like, I want to know the backstory. I want to know how this came to be.
Yeah, I looked hard. I looked hard for that information. I did for some reason. A lot of people don't are interested in behind the scenes.
Yeah,
information about this terrible movie.
My really quick assumption. Is that James Doodleson? I think that's how I pronounce his name. I could be completely wrong. The co-director of this. I see his credits. He also is an executive producer on the new Creepshow TV show. So I'm assuming he either bought the rights or is in charge of like the production company behind they came and swooped in and got the rights when nobody was looking and made this movie. That's my assumption, and then that's why he got his name on the TV show. And I hope to God he didn't do anything beyond that than just have his name on that TV show. But anyway, why is this a thing? And also, why these people who don't understand the the essence of Creepshow.